everyone, and welcome to the Change Makers podcast, where we chat with interesting and engaging individuals here and far about change, making change, living change in their own lives, how they've experienced unimaginable change, and innovative ways people uplift the lives of others. We chat about triumphs over tragedies, mindset matters, and how we live out our life's purpose inspirationally. So please join us to be inspired and empowered to be the change you want to see in this world. You know, we can all be change makers in our lives. Here's to the change you're about to bring forth. Good morning. Welcome again to our Change Makers podcast. I'm Kimberly Rice, Chief Change Maker of Change Makers. We are so delighted to have an amazing woman, business owner, published author, speaker, leadership coach, etc., to have with us today, and that is Michelle Tillis Lederman. And we're going to have an amazing conversation about how she helps create connected leaders and cultures in companies across the country, if not the world. So welcome, Michelle.
Thanks, Kimberly.
So share with our listeners, if you would, a bit about yourself, your professional passion, and a few insights into your professional journey.
I am an animal-loving, travel and adrenaline junkie. I'm a mother of two. I love what I do for work, but I feel like when somebody says, "Tell me about you," I don't want to just focus on the work, because I think when we talk about my work, which is about connection, we connect on more than the what we do. We connect on the what we care about. So I always love to share a little bit about that. But what I do is help people work better together. That was the answer I came up with when my son asked me what I do, and I was trying to, in a 6-year-old, at the time he was 6, response, kind of explain, well, you know, I just help people work better together and talk nicer to each other and connect.
Well, which we know is, it sounds simple, but it's nothing, there's nothing simple about it.
It is not simple. It is, there's so many things that impact how we act on a daily basis and how people respond to us, and the effectiveness of it, and how it makes them feel, how it makes us feel. And sometimes it's hard to, even though there's things that we know, being able to implement them at the right moments.
Yes.
So really my work, as I said, is about connection, and I do it through training, and I do it through coaching, and I do it through speaking, and I do it through my books. And I do it through podcasts like this, and my blog and my YouTube and things like that, because I want to get this content out there. I actually want to put myself out of business by starting to help students. So my 14-year-old just read my book and did a presentation to his class. And I figured if I can get this into the schools, then I can put myself out of business, and that would be wonderful.
Wow, that would be amazingly impactful. So tell us a little bit above and beyond what you do. What is it that, when you're not feeding your passion of your work, what is it that you care about?
I care about animals. So I actually vetted my husband by making him walk rescue dogs and pick up poop and things like that.
That's wonderful.
And I love travel. My kids have been to 20 countries, and they are 12 and 14 now. And, if I can see the world and meet different people, it fuels my soul.
Sure.
What do you care about? Tell your listeners.
Yes, honestly, I care about uplifting and supporting women professionals to help them create the career of their dreams by charting their own course. And if we parse those words, the charting your own course, to me, is the key, because the majority of women are in the workforce these days, these decades, and it's not always, in fact, often it's not an easy place to be. and navigating and standing in integrity and standing in your own worth. And having been in corporate and as an employee for 23 years prior to starting my first business, KLA Marketing, now for over 11 years, I've seen it from both sides. And I for some reason, have been blessed with a healthy sense of confidence and self-direction and motivation. And so I did all that I could do in corporate world, but I have coached and worked with women for over 25 years who are not gifted as I am. They have other gifts that they struggle, and they have a lot of stress and anxiety and all those things. And it just is heartbreaking to me. So truly, yes, this is what I do for my career and my profession, but I have a really deep heart strings pulled when I see the struggles that they go through. So, I'm involved with the Girl Scouts, and I mentor girls and young college students, etc., to help them, to give them the tools and to have the better recognition of self before they get chewed up by the reality of what could be their corporate America.
I love that.
Thank you. I mean, it really, truly, I do feel like, after all the years that I've been in the workplace, that this is my true calling. This is my purpose of, supporting and uplifting, empowering, whether it's the 6-year-old Brownie Scout that's becoming the Girl Scout, that's the college student that goes and getting her first job, that we all have those paths, and nobody has the definitive guide on how to move through all of those milestones with ease, because there's just nothing easy about it. And so I feel not only that it's my purpose, but it's my responsibility to share all that I've learned and all the science and the studies and all the great leaders and mentors that I've worked with, and pass that knowledge and wisdom along. And so I'm likewise fascinated to, connect with like-minded women like yourself who are on similar paths and share the calling, if you will, to make to bring that type of change into the workplace and into the lives of women professionals.
Well, all those people out there who are feeling like they might be stuck or they're not liking where they are, my quick history of work evolution might give you a little inspiration, because I always call myself a recovering CPA. I spent 10 years in finance. My school studies were in accounting and finance, and my minors were writing and communications, and I just didn't see the career in it. And I spent 10 years, only woman on the trading floor, only woman on a venture capital team. I had a corner office looking out at the New York Stock Exchange, and it was as if there was bars on the window. But I invested so much in this career, and you're making so much money at that point, and it's challenging to walk away. And I didn't just walk away. I laid the groundwork.
Right.
And for those people who are thinking about that change, that's certainly something that I can talk about, how I made that transition, because it wasn't like, okay, I quit.
Right.
Because that's not often realistic. I was pregnant. I was putting my husband through business school. I was the breadwinner. We're not always in the situation where we can do that. So what I did was I started to build it on the side. There's a time where I was teaching at NYU in the evenings. I was, taking a day off from work and going to teach at JP Morgan, which was my first client. And I was just, building those relationships and creating an income from the work I wanted to do, and that I felt like was my calling, while still having a full-time job in finance, until I could have enough to survive.
Right.
It certainly wasn't it wasn't even close to a match of my old income when I left, but I created a foundation, and I created channels of income. So that's a little bit about my story.
What did that time frame look like, just as a point of reference?
So I started this work probably in 2001. And again, it was on the side while I was working for a bank. And I incorporated my company in 2004, still full-time in finance. And during 2005, I started to wean myself down to part-time. And by the end of 2005, while I was very, very pregnant with my first child, I've been on my own since then.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So it's not just, I mean, I know that it's not, but for those women who are our listeners, and that they're thinking and contemplating that there needs to be something different or more to their professional journey, I actually, a couple of people have said, and I experienced myself, it's usually around, oftentimes is around the early 40s. And it can be earlier, certainly, but
Yeah, I probably was in my late 20s when I started
oh,
to figure it out.
yep.
Um, I graduated school at 21. So I was starting the transition probably in my late 20s, but
Wow.
certainly it was in my very early 30s where I was started on my own.
Well, good for you. Good for you. I started KLA marketing in 2008, and probably stayed too long, but there's always a reason, and so that just gave me more fodder for sharing and knowing that I'm basically unemployable now, which is a wonderful place to be. So one of your cornerstone programs is the Executive Essentials.
So Executive Essentials is the company that I built. That is
Yes.
the company that does communications, leadership, team building, training, coaching, and my work outside of the company is the keynote speaking and me being the one in front of the room.
Sure.
I have a whole team now because as we grow and as we, I started this because I wanted to be a working mom and have flexibility to do what I love. And when you work at something with a passion and when you feel that it is, what you're meant to do, things happen. And
Yes.
my first book came out in 2011, and I got a contract with the city of New York in 2011. And that's when things kind of blew up, because I was getting called to do speaking, and there was a lot of demand for the work at these government agencies. And so I started to build a team around me. And so now I do almost none of the work for New York City, and it's probably 70% of the business.
Wow. So tell us more about the Executive Essentials, outside of, that you have that team to execute on your behalf, the positive changes that helps clients to achieve a greater impact and helps to improve retention.
Well, that is, really what it's all about. If you decide to stay internal, but you want to feel better in that space, it is about understanding that connection makes that difference. There is a greater impact on mortality of obesity than of social isolation. So let me phrase that in a clearer way. Social isolation will kill you faster than being overweight.
Wow.
And it will kill you about the same as if you had smoked 15 cigarettes a day for 10 years. So when we have close work relationships, we are happier.
Right.
It's actually a predictor of our happiness on the job, and we're 50% more productive.
Wow.
It also impacts our success on the job because when we are liked, our ideas are seen as credible and more trustworthy, and we are seen as more innovative. And so the way our ideas are received and then morphed through that exchange with others creates more impact. So these connections that we create within our organizations and with our coworkers impact us in so many different ways. And if you do want to leave, you're going to get that job because of who you know, not from some online job search, which is only about 2% of how people get a job.
Right.
85% is with networking.
Sure. Well, I mean, it's, we hear networking all over the place now. And in my experience, because I lead a lot of networking type breakout groups and, programs across the country for different organizations. And one of my first questions is, so what does networking mean to you? And, after about 5 or 6 responses, I'm in my mind, I'm saying, nope, 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 nope. And it's interesting and fascinating even after decades of networking being in mainstream pop culture or business speak, that most individuals, business people, business owners really do not have a handle on the objective and essence of what it is. And it, because it's so impactful and imperative to be able to pivot throughout our professional journeys. Without networking, as you say, there's isolation, there's lack of connection, and given that that is a primary pathway to more, whatever the more is for each individual, it's astounding to me how many people still approach it in a very unproductive and self-sabotaging manner.
I always say networking is just another way of making friends.
Right.
But in my last book, my brother-in-law came into my office as I was working on the book, and he said, what's the, he's like, you wrote this book on likability, and now you wrote this book called The Connector's Advantage. She's like, what's the difference? He's like, what's the difference between networking and connecting? And it was such a profound question. It ended up being the last line of the book. And I said, networking is something you do. A connector is who you are.
Right. Exactly. So speaking of your Connector's Advantage, this latest book, tell us about it, please.
So when I say a connector is who you are, it's about how we approach everything that we do. So this book, The Connector's Advantage, it talks about the 7 mindsets to grow your influence and impact. And what I realized in the research was that anyone can infuse these attributes into their behaviors and their interactions to get the advantage. And the advantage is basically whatever it is you're working on, you're going to get there faster, easier, and better.
Mm-hmm.
So, I tell a story at the beginning of the book about when I got laid off. So back in 2001, when I started to realize what I wanted to do, I actually got laid off from the consulting firm I was working for. And I was stunned.
Yes.
It was a Monday. On Tuesday, I called my friend from business school. I said, guess what? I just got laid off. And his response, like literally without missing a beat, his response was, come work here. And I was like, well, what would I do there? And he's like, come down to my office tomorrow. We'll talk. So Wednesday comes around. I go to his office. We chat. He's like, come back tomorrow and meet my boss. Okay, so now it's Thursday. I've been laid off for a couple of days. I've gotten used to this idea. Going to meet his boss, and we're chatting. And somewhere in the conversation, he's like, so can you start tomorrow? And I'm not usually at a loss for words, but I was at that moment. And luckily my friend's like, why don't we give her the weekend?
And are you asking yourself, so what is the job?
And I started Monday.
Yes. Wow.
And so, that's what I mean by faster. I mean, come on. I was literally working at the next job in less than 1 week from cleaning out my desk. Easier. Well, certainly that was easy. I wasn't even trying to find a job yet. And better, I actually attribute that job and that role with the ability to make the shift out, because it was at that bank where they gave me opportunity to do the training work. While I still did all the finance work, they really helped me with my liftoff.
That's amazing. And that, and you couldn't have planned it.
No.
Right.
But that's what the Connector's Advantage is.
Yes.
And so what I want people to understand is I did research and I was looking for the attributes that embody connectors, and I found them, but I also found that anybody can embody them. You don't have to be wired a certain way. And so I'll share with you the 7 mindsets, and then you can maybe pick 1 or 2 and see how much time we have to talk about them. But
certainly,
connectors are open and accepting. They have a clear vision. They believe in abundance. They trust. They're social and curious, conscientious, and they have a generous spirit.
Well, one of the things that springs to mind, and these are great, is in the work that I've done in legal services, so many people say to me, so many professional lawyer women have said to me, oh my God, I can't stand networking. I'm such an introvert. It's so uncomfortable. It doesn't come natural to me. I'm the last person you'd ever want to send out to networking. How do you respond to that, knowing what you know and the research you've done with the connector's advantage?
So first of all, introverts have an edge when it comes to
Yes.
networking. They're
Yes.
better in the one-on-one. They're great listeners, and they're not off-putting.
Right.
So as you say, no, that's not network, that's not networking. Networking doesn't have to look a certain way. When I say social and curious, I don't mean social butterfly, and I don't mean life of the party. I just mean somebody who's willing to go out there and be curious and learn about somebody and share a little bit about themselves and look for those points of connection to build relationship.
Right.
If we stop calling it networking, which has the word work in it, and we start calling it, in my first book, I called it relationship networking. And in this book, I just call it connecting.
Yes.
It isn't so, okay, let me flip a switch and be in this mode. No, just be you.
Yes. Yes, I see that, but people, for those folks that they don't think that connecting comes natural for them, how to adapt that to their personality or their sensitivities, to being in a room of people that they may or may not know. That sometimes that's been a hard sell. One of the suggestions that I provide is oftentimes it can help if you have a role. So you could hand out the programs, or you could hand out the name tags, or you could show people where the bar is, or, to put on a hat that's not so raw and vulnerable as just being yourself. Of course you're yourself, but you've taken on some type of role, and therefore it's easier to engage.
I always say, even if you can't actually volunteer, position yourself in a place where you can be of assistance.
Mm-hmm.
And, greet people as they're coming in, because you're not the only one who feels that way. And you become a safety net for others who feel the same way, for them to come to you. It's not all your responsibility. Look for other lone wolves. I always say, either come early or stay late, because those are the easier times. In the middle is when it's the most difficult. If you come early, everybody's looking for somebody to talk to, and so it's not as much on you.
Right.
And then you have some faces throughout the evening that are, a security zone. When you stay late, you're helping to clean up. Everybody's chill at that point, and it's a little more relaxed. I'm not trying to meet everybody. It's not this frenzy.
Right.
And so those little things. But the other thing I would say is, give yourself a break.
Yes.
If your energy's not in the right place, you don't have to go to every event.
Right.
And if you are feeling a little drained, take a break. Maybe don't leave yet. But I'll never forget recently, I'm an extrovert, and even sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm not up for this, or I don't have the energy, right?
Right.
And so I went to this event, and I hadn't been part of this group in a really long time. And so I was feeling a little out of place, and I just didn't really have the energy that night. And I was there for maybe 20 minutes, and I was thinking about leaving. I was like, nobody will miss me. Nobody will notice. And I said, you know what? I'm going to give myself a break. I'm going to go to the bathroom. I'm going to go look at my phone for a little bit, and then I'm going to give it one more shot. And when I came back, I ended up running into somebody that I had met 5 years earlier. He had seen me speak, and he remembered me. And he's like, I remember. And it was so, he gave me energy. It was just such a wonderful moment for me. And then I ended up seeing some other people I knew, and it became a little bit like a reunion. Even though I wasn't close to them in any way, and the conversations were really short, it just made me feel a little more grounded. And what happened is, that guy who remembered me from 5 years earlier ended up hiring me, and I have been doing consistent work for his company ever since.
Oh,
And
wow.
And it was just because I gave it a little extra energy. I gave myself the break. I allowed my energy to reemerge, and I gave it one more shot. And I didn't stay the whole night, but sometimes when we extend ourselves a little bit, you just never know.
It really does, and this is something that I do a lot of teaching around mindset. Showing up with intention. If certainly not working against your own energy if you are not bringing the positive energy with you to that space. But I want to circle around in the last few minutes of our time together. One of the 7 points piqued my interest because I love it, and that is to show up with a curious spirit or curiosity.
Social and curious.
Social and curious. So share with us and our leaders what that looks like in the framework of greater connections for life and business that you've observed and you've seen?
Well, it's similar to what we've been talking about. I wanted to make sure that people understood social and curious didn't have to look a certain way. But when I talk about curiosity, what I want people to think about is what they actually want to know about somebody, and not just, what do you do? And that's, coming full circle to how we started this conversation, which is when you said, tell me about you, I didn't start with what I do.
Right.
Because people don't connect on that. They connect on common interests and common values and common experiences and common people and common aspirations. It's where you are going on vacation next that I want to go and I want to hear about it. I had somebody who was in a class of mine who was planning a trip to Croatia, and I had literally just come back from a trip from Croatia. And so she came back and she's like, can I pick your brain? And I said, yes. And so we extended that connection and created deeper relationship because of something that had nothing to do with anything.
Certainly. And it's wonderful to be able to connect like that, because in my experience, I find that trust, which is huge, trust and friendship comes faster when you have some type of common connection that you can come together around.
Well, that is the law of similarity.
Yes.
So people like them.
Right.
And the sub-law of association is people trust when there is that connection point. So it goes back to college logic. If A, then B. If B, then C. If A, then C. Right? If you like Sue and I like Sue, then Sue, then you know what I mean? So Sue will like you, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's never been easier now with all the technology and the social media platforms.
Yes.
How many of us look at, if you receive just for example, a LinkedIn connection, and one of the things that you look at is who are they connected to, which kind of gives you that inherent, trustworthiness and reputation, versus if you're not connected in any other way and it's just some random person that you may or may not know from any part of your life.
And if you go down even further and you see, what are their influencers, what are they following? You look at their school. I look at who we have in common, and I scroll because I always want to figure it out. Like, how do you know this guy I went to camp with? And I look for those people. I don't look for like, oh, I know how I know them, or that makes sense that they know this person too. But to be able to find the places that you're like, oh, what a weird commonality. Those are the fun ones.
Those are the fun ones, very fun ones. So from your perspective, Michelle, what are some simple steps that individuals can focus on to develop, a winning game plan for making the greatest connections?
It's an interesting question because the game plan throws me. One of the things that I always talk about is to not be so strategic.
Okay.
I say have the conversations you want to have with the people you're enjoying talking to, because you don't know who their neighbor is. You don't know who they went to school with. You don't know who they're married to. And when you have the mindset of a connector, there's a question that's always going to come up, which is, what are you working on? How can I help you? And I want you to ask that question, and I want you to have an answer to that question. And if that's a game plan to you, then I'll be okay with that.
Exactly. And it looks different for various people. I mean, we have the rules followers, and then we have the rebels, and ultimately it just needs to be what we call the secret sauce, and that is consistent, regular, and persistent, and being persistent in moving forward to make the connections that you want and need to make, to accomplish whatever your goals may be, grow your business, find a new position or navigate in your organization, whatever. But it's, in our day and age, in my view and my experience, is that it's no longer a choice to be a connector, whether or not to be a connector.
There's a spectrum. I think we're all connectors. And I think it's about what level connector you are. I actually have a quiz about what level connector you are,
Hmm.
so that people can see where they fall on the spectrum between non-connector and global super connector. And to begin to see that the way we move up that spectrum is, there's two levers. The first is the initiation versus responsiveness. If you start to initiate reach out, if you start to initiate assistance, then you're starting to kind of move up the spectrum. And the other is the breadth and depth of our connections. We can go deep in a certain industry or a certain job function or a certain geography, and we can be a niche connector, or we can be, really broad and know people up and down the ladder, across industry, across geography, across function. And the further up the spectrum you go, the greater the advantage.
Yes, of course, of course. And that, I mean, I find more than not, I mean, you can find that lucky needle in the haystack, but at the same time, it's, through investing ourselves in the get, know, and like factor, and investing ourselves in truly being the 7 attributes that you described, and being truly curious, and a giver, and truly in what I call the service mindset, to have the objective of helping others. And that goes a long, long ways.
I am with you. That's that spirit of generosity.
Generosity, exactly. Well, this has been a very, very fascinating conversation, Michelle, and I greatly appreciate you carving out the time to speak with us. And we're so excited about your book, Connector's Advantage. And so I want to give our listeners information on what is the best way to connect with you. So whether they want to engage you specifically, or they want to find a way to purchase your book or other books. How is the easiest way for our listeners to connect with you?
The easiest way is actually to start with my website. So my website is Michelle with 2 L's, Tillis, Tillis, Lederman, Lederman.com. And from there, that's the hub. You can find my YouTube channel. You can find my blog. You can find my LinkedIn, which is my favorite platform. My Insta, the Twitter, the Facebook, all of them are on there. But LinkedIn is my favorite. You can also get the gift pack that I have. So I mentioned that quiz and some free chapters of the books and I've got an interview preparation checklist, lots of free goodies because I want to add value. And so you can go to my website and put your email address right on the homepage, or you can see the things that I give away on the /gift pack page.
Wonderful. Wow. I applaud you for covering all the channels. I can personally attest to the amount of energy and thought and time that requires to build and grow robust online presence. I love it. I think it's a wonderful, a venue for connecting. And, I'm sure that you and I at least had a taste of what life was like before the internet and social media. It seems so archaic now. So, well, thank you so much, Michelle. Thank you, our listening audience, again for another episode of Change Makers, where we speak with extraordinary individuals who are making real change in the lives of others. And until next time, be the change that you want to see. Thank you.